We all must be ready. You must have the political, economic, and philosophical courage to send me, or do whatever you think is necessary. I must be ready to go. If I did well, it is only because Lyndon did well in bringing me up and making me into a man. If I served the military well, it is only because the military trained me to be a good officer. If I am a good American, it is only because America brought me up to be a good American.
It was a sight to touch the heart of the most callous in the crowd. Lieutenant George Coker was back in Linden, New Jersey, the hero of the day. 3,000 people turned out to greet him. Schools were closed and streets were blocked as the young former prisoner of war walked on a red carpet to the steps of City Hall.
Mic is still open.
Well, I'm from Duncan, Oklahoma, which is about 90 miles south of here. And I lived around several places, Missouri and Chicago, Detroit, Germany. By the time I got out of high school, I was very conservative. We have, in Duncan High School, the high school had bought a, a John Birch package on communism. So we studied communism via the John Birch Society, and with the big red map with the flowing out of the disease and so forth, and learned how Karl Marx was a very cruel man and used to make his family suffer and so forth. So when I got out of high school, I thought basically that Teddy Roosevelt's what this country needed, and FDR had kind of sold us down the drain to the commies.
The communist conspiracy is a deliberate and predictable plan of action to subvert the world.
Mosinee, Wisconsin, in a unique May Day object lesson, shows what could happen here if communism took over. The unyielding chief of police is liquidated by American legionnaires portraying red triggermen. A grim demonstration of what subversion could lead to, Mosinee's May Day serves as a sharp warning to all democratic communities.
It's an international criminal conspiracy.
Before we know it, we're going to turn our backs around someday, and before we know it, the whole United States, we're going to turn around one day and see nothing but VC. Or not VC, but communism. We're going to turn around and say, what happened? People just walking in with riots, drugs, you name it. They're tearing us down from inside out.
In 1917, when the communists overthrew the Russian government, there was one communist for every 2,277 persons in Russia. In the United States today, there is one communist for every 1,814 persons in this country.
If we lose Indochina, Mr. Jenkins, we will lose the Pacific, and we'll be an island in a communist sea.
Go ahead. How did it go?
Oh, Mother. I swear that I am not now or ever have been a member of the Communist Party. Feel better?
Of course, when you get down to communism, I've been fighting communism since 1951, actually.
I always looked at, the American fighting man as being, like a warrior of sorts, due to, my background, the way my mother brought me up. She always spoke of the warrior societies of our tribe and of the different tribes around us, and how that these men always had to work to gain the respect of the people around them, and how they had to live more or less a life dictated to them by the society that they belonged to, and it was extremely hard. I looked around, and from listening to my uncles and a lot of my relations, they had been in the Marine Corps, and they always told me that the Marine Corps was the hardest service to cope with physically and mentally. And I naturally wanted to be the best at that time, and I looked at the Marine Corps as being the elite of the elite, the warrior society in the United States.
Now, it might sound cliche-ish to say that my country may always be right, but right or wrong, my country. But that's how I felt back in '67. And during my senior year, I said, I've got an obligation to serve. I've got to fulfill it. There's no reason physically why I would be exempted. And therefore, I'm going to enlist.
What you got there? Picture? How much picture? 3,000?
I go with you 200.
Huh?
I sell you 3 top, just 50 money. You go with too much money.
I buy what? 1,500.
Now, you sell for me? You lie, you die.
You get massage? And what else you get? Huh? You buy me one beer. No money. Go home, mama sign. Wait, go home, mama sign. No, go home, mama sign. No, go home, mama sign. Okay? No, go home, mama sign. No. Huh? How much? You? It's too much. It's cool. Yeah, for sure. No good.
If you miss the train I'm on, you will know that I am gone. You can hear the whistle blow 100 miles. Lord, I'm one, Lord, I'm two, Lord, I'm three, Lord, I'm four, Lord, I'm 500 miles from my home. 500 miles, 500 miles, 500 miles, 500 miles. Lord, I'm 500 miles from my home.
We thought of ourselves, I think, as trying to defeat communists, accepting a view of the Walt Rostow kind of view of covert aggression of some kind, the kind of view that enabled you to think of the conflict in really World War II terms. That was an unquestioned assumption. It had an idealistic flavor to it, but it was the underpinning of an imperial policy, basically. I shared the assumption very easily and felt it as an idealistic one, really. We were doing something for them.
I recall that I was in the New York area at the time, and I stopped by to see General MacArthur, who I had known for several years. When he greeted me, he made quite a prophetic statement. He said, "Westmoreland, I see you have a new job." He says, "I hope you appreciate that this new assignment is filled with opportunities but fraught with hazards." And indeed, this was a prophetic statement.
Described much like a singer doing an aria, that's totally into what he's doing, totally feeling it. He knows the aria, and he's experiencing the aria, and he knows his limits, and he knows whether he's doing it and doing it well. Flying an aircraft can be a great deal like that.
What's a race driver feel like? When does a guy want to drive an Indianapolis 500 and go charging around there? I guess perhaps the risk of dying, being killed, is part of it that makes it thrilling.
I can tell when the aircraft feels just right. I can tell when it's about to stall. I can tell when I can't pull another fraction of a pound, or the airplane will stall and flip out and spin on me. I would follow a little pathway on something like a TV screen in front of me that would direct me right, left, or center. Follow the steering, keep the steering symbol centered. I'd see a little attack light when we stepped into attack. I could pull the commit switch on my stick, and the computer took over. Computer figured out the ballistics, the airspeed, the slant range, and dropped the bombs when we got to the appropriate point, in whichever kind of attack we'd selected, whether it be flying straight and level or tossing our bombs out. So it was very much of a technique.